Hi, I'm Ken Pataky, holistic psychotherapist, life and health coach. My practice is the PhoenixWay to holistic natural health. My website is www.phoenixway.net, where you can learn more about the work I do and how I can help you create your best life. Today I'm going to talk briefly about a form of holistic psychotherapy called tapping. That's the popular name for it. There are two major schools of tapping. One of them is called TFT, or thought field therapy. The other is EFT, or the emotional freedom technique. Tapping was invented in the 1980s by clinical psychologist Roger Callahan, who actually had a problem himself with phobias, and he was experimenting for several decades with clients about how to relieve phobias until he discovered that tapping on certain parts of the body actually relieved phobias. And he took his knowledge from the field of applied kinesiology, which actually borrowed their information from ancient Chinese traditional medicine. And the concept is that there are certain points on our bodies that have a lower electrical charge, that are more receptive to input energy from the tapping, and they can redirect and balance and facilitate greater movement of energy through the body, and especially between the head and heart areas. So you'll find that in the process of tapping, whether it's TFT or EFT, most of the tapping points are on the head, the face, the chest, or the torso, and the hands. And so TFT, which was the original form of thought field therapy, tapping, that I am actually certified in, is a form that's not as verbal as the other type, and it uses specific patterns of tapping for specific issues. There's a different pattern for anxiety and trauma. There's another different pattern for anger and frustration. There's another one for guilt and shame, for example. And you learn different patterns for different conditions. And you can do it silently and quietly and, very, very discreetly. The other form of therapy, tapping therapy, was invented or created by one of Dr. Callahan's students, Gary. Oh gosh, Gary. I'll remember his name later. But he popularized EFT, and he decided that it would be easier for people to remember doing EFT in a circle, repeating the same movements over and over again, going through all the points. He was also trained in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. This is a way of using positive affirmations to shift your energy and focus on a more positive outcome rather than holding yourself back with negative beliefs. So the EFT form of tapping incorporates both the physical tapping and the positive belief systems and the positive statements or affirmations throughout the process. So I tend to use both of these depending on the person and what they're most comfortable with. Some people are more verbal than others and enjoy the EFT version. Some people are more kinesthetic and they find that the verbal part is distracting, so then we focus more on the physical tapping points. So either way, this is also a strategy that I teach to clients before we get into really deep trauma work. It can be used directly in trauma work. It can be also used before trauma work as a way to help people calm themselves and regulate themselves, to better control their emotions, so that when they get ready to do the trauma work, they're less anxious about losing control of themselves and having a panic attack or a meltdown, wherever they might be. So it's a technique I use to prepare for trauma work. It's a technique I use in trauma work, and there's more. I can have a whole nother video on using EFT or TFT for trauma work. And I do that along with EMDR. Sometimes I go back and forth between the two. And it's also a technique that I can just use for people who don't have trauma, who want to better learn to regulate their emotions, like their anger or their sadness, if they're recovering from grief, or their anxiety or stress. So it's a beautiful technique that is easy to learn. And one of the great things, I'll finish with this, one of the great benefits to tapping that is different than EMDR. EMDR is very therapist focused and it's designed to be done only in session. Whereas EFT and TFT tapping can be taken home and used wherever you go and wherever you are. And so that's one of the beautiful things that I like about tapping, and that's why I have my clients typically learn that and practice that at home until they get familiar with it before we get into more serious and difficult work. So thank you very much again for your time. I wish I could remember Gary's last name. I'll have to vindicate that in another video. But thank you for your time today, and I do look forward to working with you. Go on out to my Connect page and set a appointment for yourself online, and we can get started working together.